So I was reading the Buffalo Shooter's manifesto for last week's Tubcast, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, but a lot of his motivation revolved around the Great Replacement. In case you don't know, though I think everyone knows this by now, the Great Replacement is a conspiracy theory by the French writer Renaud Camus? I don't know French, guys. Even though I'm a Canadian, I don't know French. It states that the predominantly ethnic French population of France is actively being replaced by a 1-2 punch of declining indigenous French birth rates and an increase of foreign immigration to France, specifically of the non-European variety, more specifically of the Muslim variety. He believes this is a coordinated effort by a cabal of elites within French society that he calls the Replacists, though he only wrote about this idea in the context of France in his 2011 book, The Grand Replacement. The idea has a lot of similarity with the theories of the American neo-Nazi David Lane, who coined the phrase white genocide to refer to, the exact same thing, low fertility rates and high amounts of non-white immigration to America, leading to a demographic decline of white people. Being a neo-Nazi, Lane obviously blamed a cabal of Jews running everything in place of the French Replacists. But there's a lot of overlap between the two ideas, such that in the modern era, the phrases Great Replacement and white genocide have become synonymous despite them having two different origins. And the Buffalo Shooter used both of their rhetoric interchangeably in his manifesto. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, ever since the Buffalo Massacre, YouTube's been adding these COVID-type cards to every video discussing the topic. You can probably see one right here below. It's nice to see that shepherding viewers to politically approved sources is alive and well, even though lockdowns are over. Yes, YouTube, the great savior, save us all from wrongthink. I'm just joking around, please don't demonetize me. In the wake of Buffalo, just like in the wake of Christchurch, the online left began to blame a number of rightist creators for spreading the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, and therefore radicalizing people into violence. One of these people so blamed is Lauren Southern. I got into it a little bit in the Paul Joseph Watson video. The TLDR on Lauren Southern is that while she was much more libertarian and conspiracy-y in her youth, she left the alt-right, left the internet, started a family, and came back a year or two later as a very standard conservative mom type. Left-leaning people have been very vocal in blaming Destiny for helping rehab Lauren's image among centrists, since the two of them have palled around a lot on stream since her return. And she does seem to genuinely be moving away from some of her more radical older views. So now the discourse is, Destiny, how could you associate with a person who inspired Christchurch and Buffalo? It's possible that Lauren's aware of the influence that she's had, because her own video on the Great Replacement from 2017 has been set to private on her channel. I know this because Sean did a video replying to it back in the day, and he links hers in the description. And clicking on it brings up the fact that it's private, so it's easy to actually confirm. That being said, it's not hard to find a copy of Lauren's video. And since a big meta conversation in the Twitch politics space right now is Lauren rehabbing her image, I decided to watch it to see what the fuss was all about.
The Great Replacement is a term coined by French writer Renaud Camus.
Oh yeah, that's how you pronounce the name. Thanks, Lauren. You know what? I actually didn't see this video back in 2017. And based on the number of people screeching online, I thought this was going to be a video of Lauren Southern sacrificing black babies to Moloch or something. But you know what? She's very inflammatory, using some of the B-roll in the way that she does, and I don't agree with her conclusions. But the actual raw data in the video seems to be accurate. The birth rates of native people in first world countries, not just white ones, but clearly places like Japan and South Korea as well, are down. Immigration is slowly replacing those empty spots where new kids would have previously filled them, and immigrants also tend to have more children. And separate from Lauren's video, separate from any sort of conspiracy theory, separate from whether or not this is good or bad, intentional or not, the facts bear this out. Here is the world's fertility rate by country. Here is immigration by country. You can go check this out yourself. The data is in on this. And despite the data being in, we've seen a massive push from the legacy media to declare that it's just not happening, and that you're actually a racist white nationalist if you think it is. The New York Times, for example, stated that Tucker Carlson uses rhetoric related to an unfounded racist conspiracy theory that falling birth rates in immigration are leading to the replacement of white people. Versions of replacement theory have been promoted by extremists and have helped inspire mass shootings. I don't know what Tucker says in these episodes, but the claim from the New York Times that it's unfounded and racist to think that falling birth rates in immigration will lead to the replacement of white people just seems to be false. Check out this article by Tim Wise. Those who push replacement theory are to blame for racist terrorism. Looking at you, Tucker Carlson. Violence is the inevitable result of such thinking, and its mouthpieces should be held accountable. This entire article is shrieking about how the Great Replacement conspiracy theory is not simply within the manifesto of 4chan radicalized shooters, but is in fact parroted by mainstream figures on the right, spoken about openly by GOP elected officials. And the author believes that the only possible thing to do with somebody who believes that this is happening, somebody who believes in the data, is to kill them before they kill you. Debate and discussion is irrelevant. They have to die, or so Tim Wise says. On NPR a week ago, the Great Replacement conspiracy theory isn't fringe anymore, it's mainstream. insane. Check this out. A recent poll found that 1 in 3 American adults now believes in a version of replacement theory. The speed with which this false narrative has tipped into American discourse since a French ethno-nationalist first coined the term roughly a decade ago has stunned even extremism experts who have tracked the spread of hate-filled ideologies. Between 2010 and 2020, the percentage of Americans who identified as white only declined by more than 10%, from 72% to 62%. So, it's a false narrative that 1/3 of Americans believe because of social media and Fox News. And at the same time, the data that you yourself post in the very next paragraph shows it to be true? At this point, it seems like the left's position on the Great Replacement is, if you talk about it, if you parrot its points to your audience, then you are responsible for the crazies who come out and commit violence in its name, even though the data shows it to be true. Okay, let's take a look at people who have come out and talked about it, and are therefore responsible for Christchurch and Buffalo. Here's a journalist for the Daily Beast, Wajahat Ali. Do you believe in the Great Replacement? Do you condemn it? If you do condemn the replacement theory and the Buffalo white supremacist terrorist actions of Manifesto, why are you repeating it? Why do you create ads saying the exact same thing he wrote? Journalists and reporters should be asking this of every Republican elected official this week. Here's Ali back in 2019. The USA and the European Union won't be able to replenish their population without immigrants. Also, fewer working people will hurt the economy, and less workers means less taxes for social services. White nationalism is in for a hell of a surprise. So, Ali, why are you repeating the content of the Buffalo Shooters Manifesto? Here's an article on Bloomberg. Demography favors the Democrats. We know that the racial identity of the average American is changing, and with this demographic shift comes monumental political consequences. We already witnessed the effects of this in the 2008 presidential election, for example, when young and minority voters carried Barack Obama to victory. That year, it seems, a switch flipped in favor of the Democratic Party. And if voting preferences and turnout trends continue as they have been in the past several elections, America's increasingly diverse electorate isn't going to make it easy to flip this switch back. Here's California House Rep Ted Lieu. Native-born Americans like you are no more American and no less American than an immigrant like me. And with every passing year, there will be more people who look like me in the US. You can't stop it. So take your racist replacement theory and shove it. Oh God. He's literally calling people a racist for believing in the very thing he describes. Reality is racist now, guys. Despite the New York Times lambasting Tucker Carlson earlier in the video, here's an article from them in 2018 titled, "We Can Replace Them." Right now, America is tearing itself apart as an embittered white conservative minority clings to power, terrified at being swamped by a new multiracial polyglot majority. The divide feels especially stark in Georgia, where the midterm election is a battle between Trumpist reaction and the multicultural America whose emergence to the right is trying at all costs to forestall. In a week, American voters can do to white nationalists what they fear the most: show them they're being replaced. How many Democrat politicians, voters, celebrities, whatever, do you think have made public statements alluding to demographic change?
In a few years, we're going to be a majority brown country. White people will not be the majority in the country anymore.
This will be the first generation ever in American history in which whites will be a minority of the generation at some point.
As of 2007, every year, babies being born in this country, whites now are the minority.
In 2044, everyone is going to be a minority.
As the demographics change, as white people become the minority in the country, which is coming.
Demographics is destiny.
Demographics is destiny.
Demographics is destiny, right? The country is changing.
I've been saying it here. Other people have been saying it here for years now, even before Donald Trump. The demographics is destiny.
The white population is declining for the first time in history in America, while the number of multiracial Americans have more than doubled.
So we live in a country where the demographics are changing. It's becoming less white.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll be announcing that we're calling the 38 electoral votes of Texas for the Democratic nominee for president. It's changing. It's going to become a purple state and then a blue state because of the demographics, because of the population growth.
The growth in Texas has been almost entirely driven by non-white population growth, mostly by Hispanic and Latino population growth.
The idea that whites will not be the majority, I mean, it's an exciting transformation of the country. It's an exciting evolution and progress of our country in many different ways.
The white population is declining. It was always on the upswing. So that speaks to the beautiful diversity of America. It speaks to how that population the demographics will weigh in politically.
So, considering just how many of these people used some variation of the American white nationalist slogan, demographics are destiny, are all of them responsible for white supremacist violence? President Biden seems to think so.
I believe anybody who echoes a replacement is to blame, not for this particular crime, but it's for no purpose except profit and or political benefit. And it's wrong.
I couldn't have said it better myself, dude. Of course, a core component of all of this is the idea that not only are demographics changing, but that a series of elites are actively orchestrating the change for some shadowy purpose. A sentiment shared by Bernie Sanders back in 2007, when restricting illegal immigration was not considered a racist right-wing thing, but a protecting the working class left-wing thing.
If poverty is increasing and if wages are going down, I don't know why we need millions of people to be coming into this country as guest workers who will work for lower wages than American workers and drive wages down even lower than they are right now.
And as we know, the principal industries which hire the bulk of illegal aliens, that is construction, landscaping,
Lou, I just heard
something. Those are all industries in which wages are declining. I don't hear that discussed on the Senate floor by the proponents of this amnesty legislation.
That's right. They have no good response. I just read something today that a lot of people coming into this country are coming in as lifeguards. I guess we can't find, that's right, we can't find American workers to work as lifeguards.
And this is the center of the conversation. From the French Grand Replacement to the American neo-Nazi white genocide, the culpability of some cabal of elites is necessary to transform what is simply a demographic trend into a legitimate genocide. And just so we're clear, the definition of genocide is acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. As such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. If we're using this definition, the phrase acts committed with intent is an important component. A genocide is not something that can be accidentally or incidentally done. There actually has to be that cabal of shadowy elites pulling the strings, not just individuals who don't want to have kids, and immigrants who just want to move to a more prosperous nation. For the white supremacists, that group is the Elders of Zion. For the socialists, it's the bourgeois 1%. But either way, there needs to be an intentionality there. And frankly, I don't think there is. I've listened to several white nationalists talk about this stuff, and they're quite friendly people. They're very much, oh, we don't actually hate any other races. We just want to secure a future for white children. And even if we take them at face value on that one, their ideas still don't fully add up. The rightoids can absolutely prove that demographics are changing, that white people are being replaced with non-white immigration, and any leftoid who disagrees with that is just factually wrong. The data is not on their side, and they're asking you to disbelieve your own eyes. But the rightoids cannot prove that there is a group of replacist elites who are actually puppet masters of the migrants and of nations themselves. They cannot prove that there is an intentionality behind the demographic shift. Instead, they're the manic chain smoke with a wall full of pictures and strings. And as much as I hate the left's blatant anti-white racism, the right's conspiratorial connect the dots attitude towards what actually turns out to be disparate data points in order to craft a grand narrative is just as bad. There is no concentrated effort by anti-whites in positions of power to exterminate the white race. The World Economic Forum, for all of its evil, does not actually control nations. Neither does the International Monetary Fund. It's not the Jews, it's not the bourgeois capitalist 1%, it's none of that shit. It seems far more likely to me that what's going on is the result of several disconnected but overlapping factors. Birth control and the resulting decline in birth rate began in the 1960s, while women gaining the right to own property, hold down their own jobs, pursue higher education, and vote all happened as a part of a slow, multi-generational process starting long before the sexual revolution. And yet, these separate things are factors that best predict a population's demographic decline. There is no way that anti-white or anti-working class elites coordinated all of that shit across history, especially since it's also happening in East Asian countries as well. And as third world populations begin to industrialize and modernize, we see the same thing happening to them too. It's not an anti-white thing, it's a byproduct of success. You can make a solid argument that increased immigration is supported by a minority of radical progressives who actually believe in some kind of anti-whiteness. It's not hard to find wackos who have been groomed into legitimately hating themselves for a political purpose. Oh god, what the fuck are we looking at right now? But it's absolutely the case that immigration is supported for economic and not racial reasons by the majority of people. First world countries have no qualms with extracting the best and brightest of the third world, hamstringing their own advancement in the process in order to suit our needs. The reason that the rulers of our countries do this, well, one reason is because they don't have to deal with any sort of potential ethnic strife if it comes. They've got enough money and power to be isolated from that sort of thing if necessary. But more importantly, I think they genuinely believe that the strength of our culture is so overpowering that immigrants will come here and immediately assimilate, rather than creating ethnic enclaves like they actually have. It's an attitude that we're just so awesome, everyone is naturally going to become like us, we don't have to worry about it, when in reality the process of assimilation is a lot more bumpy. There seems to be a high enough rate of immigration at which a host country can no longer finish the process of assimilating the new arrivals before the next wave arrives, leading to, over time, a lack of assimilation. In other words, it's not anti-white malice or hatred, it's stupidity and irresponsibility. It's not an intentional replacement, but to claim that there is no replacement at all is to stick your head in the sand. Nonetheless, I obviously don't think that the Buffalo shooter did anything but make the world an incrementally worse place. If you want lower immigration numbers or deportation of illegal immigrants as a matter of government policy, that's something you can vote for. That's a platform you can run on yourself. And frankly, don't cry to me about how the Democrats imported a bunch of brown people and now you can't win elections anymore. Those newly arrived legal Latino immigrants in America are conservative as fuck. They are a natural voting base for the GOP. They value the family structure, their church, their community, hard work, all of those conservative virtues that the Republicans should be catering to. They are the electoral path forward, much to the Democrats' dismay that they thought they were always going to get the non-white vote. If the right wants to win elections in the future, the path is pretty clear. Stop believing in the image of a darkened, cigarette smoke-filled room of suit-wearing billionaires who are plotting the downfall of the white race, and recognize that the newly arrived immigrants are much more likely to side with you than with the rainbow-haired wokeoids whose policies turn every American inner city into a crack shack.
The results of the 2020 census just came out, and for the first time in American history, the number of white people went down. Wait, what? That's an interesting reaction to that.